Hello and welcome to the 48th Radical Poetry Reading. I'm Malvika Jolly, Special Projects Associate here at The Rail, and today I have the pleasure and privilege of welcoming poet and translator Pierre Joris to the Zoom stage, who has lovingly curated a fantastic lineup of poets and artists of all kind, featuring Alan Fisher, Randall Horton, Tracie Morris, and Layli Long Soldier. We've started out all of our events with two important acknowledgements. The first is that here in New York, we're on Lenape-Hoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wapinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and the Shinnecock Indian Nation. The second is an acknowledgement that Black Lives Matter, and I think it's worth taking a moment to remember that the heart of both of these acknowledgements is a commitment to the liberation of the oppressed and solidarity for all those who struggle for freedom, in recognition that when it comes to liberation, our histories never unfold in isolation. That beautiful thought from Angela Davis. And in that spirit, I encourage you all to check out the chat for a living document of resources and actions we've been putting together here at The Rail. I'll drop that in a moment. But now it's my honor to welcome our wonderful curator. Pierre Joris was raised in Luxembourg and over the past half-century has moved all throughout Europe, the United States, and North Africa. Over that time, publishing close to 50 books of poetry, essays, translations, and anthologies. When not on the road, he lives in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which he has affectionately deemed Sorrentinostan, with writer and multimedia performance artist Nicole Peyrafitte. Pierre, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Malvika. And thank you to the Brooklyn Rail for creating this platform and inviting us five. And thank you to the whole team that has made this event possible. Greetings here from a quick visit to South Carolina, where it will be raining in about 5 minutes, but that will not stop us. When I read the title of the series, Radical Poetry Reading, I immediately also read it as political poetry. And then I thought that if in terms of poetry, radical would most easily be associated with matters of form and political with matters of content, what I have learned over my time in poetry is exactly that content is form and form is content. If the poetry is to be durable, of durable use, and thus radical and political are indeed the same tension, intention, extension, as far as the poem is concerned. There is a sense of feeling and an intelligence, open and or hidden, maybe more open and less hidden today than ever before, that everything is political and radical. And in that sense, the concept of political or radical poetry is indeed a tautology. This was so even in those times when those in power could simply claim that it was only their opponents, the oppressed, though they would never call them that, who tried to make everything political and to radicalize both politics and art. Then there is this other phrase that came to mind, supposedly Thibault Niels from his 1935 campaign, all politics is local. As are all radicals, in that radical comes from root, and roots are seen as the most local thing ever. Even if we now learn their mycorrhizal web extends way further than we ever thought. I would suggest that today the local, even if it remains the essential place where we can learn, as the poet put it, how to dance sitting down, also has to be the global, because what is going on is global. The local has become the global and the global the local. I'm speaking for myself here, but I would think that the poets I have asked to read today and in whose company I feel honored to be reading would agree in the main. Maybe it is exactly this question that we will want to attend to after the reading in the open conversational space that follows the poetry. Meanwhile, quickly here, there are two quotes that have come to mind that seem useful to me when thinking about the work. The first one is by Paul Celan, who, writing about the concept of art, said, "I am aware that one can read this word in different ways. One can give it different accents. The acute of today, the grave of history, literary history too, or the circumflex, a sign of expansion of the eternal. I give it, I have no other choice. I give it the acute. And I do the same. I give it the acute." And maybe in order to achieve this, and here is my second quote, we will have to follow Fred Moten when he suggests that we have to renew our habits of assembly. But now, as we are assembled here, poetry talks, nobody walks. So let me start with an old habit, namely by reading the last poem I wrote. I will go into a section called the AD, meaning after Deus, not in the year of Deus, of a work in progress to be called a riparian riptide commons. For AD, Alighieri Dante, gone for 700 years, leaving us here, the Middle Kingdom, purgatory, which was paradise once, but which we soiled and are about to turn into Pyrocene hell, or at least an inferno for Homo sapiens, the disappearing species, if it comes to that. There's life left, there will be life left, and right, it will move on even without us, it will rejoice in us gone. I can hear the birds celebrating, the trees too, the air cooling, the sea cooling. It will be when the relative heat of the sand, warmed or cooled by the air, will again determine the gender of the turtles, those animals that carry the earth, and thus will be the real paradiso, the one sans sapiens, that arrogant interference. From the same book, a little opening poem. Your riparian vision, an elemental nomadism, double move of anadromos, catadromos, from mud, stay in the mud, equals water and earth, equals you. Nobody shaped us from, we are, were, came out of, go back to, only time will divide the earth from the water, the elements of us, the mud, the must. And a few poems from last year, or 2 years ago, I can't remember. That feeling, you can't go on it alone. Vagrant, vagabond, give me a V sign, double it to go wandering, leave the medulla, slip between pyramid and peduncle, the letters go backwards from jugular to carotid, down, down, afferent all the way, to count the schlep of viscera, lets you know how your gut gets its gut feeling. On the rocks, the man-shaped tree trunk on the rocks at low tide brought us the narrows. At high tide, the day before, it beats its wooden semblance against those same rocks. The twin branches imitating legs, submerged, the pinhead angled up, banging on the rocks at algae level. The twist has stayed with me these 3 days. The anthropos slowly washed up, washed out. From a year before even, Sudanese saying, one of the non-bourgeois of Calais, on one of the last days of the great emptying, i.e. the shameless hiding of the eyesore Calais refugee camps, called the jungle, where jungle is a translation of Pashto Zangal, meaning forest. One of these non-bourgeois of Calais reported a Sudanese saying to object to the refugees' dispersal, a saying that says solidarity alleviates pain. And this is how it goes. If we all die together, that is a feast. A poem from, I think, last April. Not this one, the one before, 20. A shelter is not necessarily an island. As title for something cogent right now comes to mind and brings to mind Eric Mottram's 1971 book title, Shelter Island and the Remaining World. So now is shelter the opposite of the remaining world, when the remaining world is helter-skelter, late 16th century adverb, a rhyming jingle of unknown origin, perhaps symbolic of running feet, or from Middle English skelte, hasten, or not. No, shelter is island. Island is always plural, is always already part of some multiplicity, an archipelago, a series of sound groups, a local thrush, chickadees at their red plastic spinning bins, active for dark brown striped white sunflower seeds, gulls, white crab, and cree low over wrinkling short plains. And poem from way, way further back, and it came to me to read it this morning because I had a lot of dreams during the night. So here is a book about dreams, a poem about dreams. The Dream of the Desert in the book. 1. The book lies open in all the hallways, in all the oases, in all the dreams, around every corner, behind every sand dune. In this dream too, you have to add a line. Your place is between the already written and the unwritten, in the white empty space. In this dream, Stalin smiled, and Heidegger too. In this dream, cockroaches scuttled from the book, but it had to be written in despite the smiles. A dream of a book, a dream of a desert in a book, a dream of a desert that runs from the book, a dream of a book and a desert, a dream of a desert in a book, a dream of sand through fingers, a dream of white, a dream of mica, a dream of phoenix, a dream of a desert spilling from the book into and through the hallway and out the door. And a voice said, write in the book and you will be healed. A voice said, my voice, my will, write in the book, write the desert, the dream, write the sand, the white, write the running, dream the book. 2. A dream of Stalin, a dream of Celan, a dream of parents, a dream of houses. In the first house, Celan hides in a closet and Stalin bangs his big boots and storms over the wooden floor. In the second house, Celan escapes through the back window and Stalin screams and tears at his mustaches. In the third house, we are not. It is full to overflowing with all the parents, everybody's parents, Celan's and Stalin's and mine too. In the fourth house, there is a city in ruins. A moon stands above it. It is white. It is full. It has jebels and wadis on it. It is pouring with sand. And I'll close out here with a poem I wrote November 23rd, 2020, which is the 100th anniversary of Paul Celan. I had finished after 53 years translating all his work. So that's done, I'm moving on. But here is a final poem for him. A poem or something, a give the song for Paul Celan at 100. Her hand, giant shadow, mid Bleistift on ceiling with night reading light, pillowed between us. Graphites, an unseen page on which I'll write standing up in the kitchen. The best thing about night is it is always a pre-dawn. It goes way back, halftime between your birth and now. I, with a double Breathturn, yours and mine, embarked before takeoff. Father had asked for a shake hand. A poem is that, you said, and then let go. In not my mother tongue, in my future language, he knew but reversed from early 1945 campfires in another night, a darker one you knew too. What had freed father drew me over. You already knew better, had August 49, heard Gordon Heath sing Climbing Jacob's Ladder. Twice he sang it, at the beginning and at the end, and in between strange fruit and the fraud encounter with the blonde Northerner still and always free fascist doing Paris at your table in, not on, the Echelle. And we are climbing some kind of ladder, different for each as should be, you to Paris, me to New York, both with faith only in no faith. The right to blaspheme, a first right left, after the Third Reich fell then, and now the First Empire here is falling down, falling down. My first crossing between your visit to Heidegger and your first trip to Berlin ferried me across the Charlie Gibbs fracture zone. A transformed fault displaces the mid-Atlantic ridge, lands me in a thickness to be understood from the geological and thus from the slow catastrophes into dreadful fault lines of language. But it is here, there, in the fault lines that writing starts. You wrote, Columbus eyeing the autumn colchies, the mother flower, murdered masts and sails, everything set forth free. But we ban that leagued loser, found and lost by people he murdered. Another, our atonement, I here still, 50 years after your death, which is not that of the book, the bourg, that bourg stabled staff, as the beech is, as the tree is the book, the bourg from your book Govina, the first book, the one that has the autumn crocus, only a secret echo of the literally timeless name of their colchic, our autumn crocus, called up by reality to meet again in the imagination of your city, my city, all gathered in one stands brightly on no hill but by the sea, even if a black sea, even if Colchis is and is not New York, from where I greet you this morning on your 100th birthday. Thank you. And I will have a quick sip of coffee and move on to introduce poet, writer, and activist Layli Long Soldier, who holds a BFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts and an MFA from Bard College. Hi there, I went there too, many years before. Love the place. Her poems have appeared in Poetry, the New York Times, the American Poet, the American Reader, Kenyon Review Bomb, and many, many other places. She's the recipient of an NACF National Artist Fellowship, a Lennon Literary Fellowship, a Whiting Award, and a finalist for the 2017 National Book Award. She has also received the 2018 Penn Gene Stein Award, the 2018 National Book Critics Circle Award, and the 2021 Academy of Arts and Letters Award for Literature. She's the author of Chromosomery and Whereas by Grey Wolf Press, the letter in 2017. She resides in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I keep returning to Whereas, thinking it gorgeous in the full variety of its syntactic moods and unsettling moves and vice versa, in the full knowledge that the essence of the poet's job is to bear witness. As Fred Moten put it, this gift of whereas else, which no one could possibly ask for or deserve, bears and is borne by terrible and absolute testimony. Look at what we have laid waste and how nothing in this book settles. With Long Soldier, in the interminable momentousness of her song, poetry itself is somewhere else. Maybe we can get there from there. Let's go there right now, Layli. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm unmuted now. I hope you can hear me. Yeah. Good morning, Layli Akichitahanska, Layli Long Soldier, Imachiapi, Da Yahipi Nachante Washte Nabechi Usapi. And I just said I'm happy to be here. I come with a good heart and a warm hand or something like that. So I'm very honored. Thank you, Pierre, for the invitation to be here, and thank you, Brooklyn Rail. And I'm so happy to be here with this group of poets. So I am going to share some work. It is written work along with some visuals, because I also work visually. And this is just the beginning of this piece. There is much more that it's leading to. So I'm going to just share the beginning of this piece, and it's in process. So it might work and it might not work, I don't know, but it's brand new. So I'm gonna share screen. And before I, let's see if I can find it. Oh, here we go. And I just wanted you to know that when I put on the PowerPoint, I can't see you. So if you have anything to tell me, you'll have to say it verbally. I can't see the chat or anything. Okay, really? Okay, let me see. And I'm going to do slideshow. Is that good?
It's beautiful.
Okay. When we first heard about the discovery of 215 children's remains found at Kamloops Indian Residential School in Canada, you know, my child and I were rocked. Our faces dulled and flattened into paper maps, the X's of schools and little ancestors. It felt strange as a mother to look toward the passenger seat of our car and encounter a 500-year sadness along my child's sweet mouth. All of us, our relatives, native friends, and colleagues were shaken and rocked, shaken and rocked. We rode a seismic tremor through the land. Did you feel it? 3 of my relatives could not speak about the subject, as in, they told me they could not speak, and their eyes watered with our words instead. To this, I am witness. I am supposed to be a person with command of language, yet I refuse to command at moments like this, as this is a hanging crystal, each edge a sharper feeling, sadness and outrage glint at twirling points, grief at another. And do you know that crystals are formed by slow, pressured, magmatic metamorphosis? I want to remind my relatives that the crystal's metamorphic essence is thus its greatest. But I cannot say it. The word commands me to respect privacy, to guard its strength, like ceremony. What can I write anyway? What words have any? When a Milky Way of accounts have already been spoken, written, prayed. Among the many, our beloved ancestor, Zint Kalasha, wrote about her boarding school days. And when I read it, I read a story we already know, anaphoric and muted, crystal of the earth's bedrock. Someone threw up the curtains, Zint Kalasha wrote, and the room was filled with sudden light. What caused them to stoop and look under the bed, I do not know. I remember being dragged out, though I resisted by kicking and scratching wildly. In spite of myself, I was carried downstairs and tied fast in a chair. I cried aloud, shaking my head all the while, until I felt the cold blades of the scissors against my neck and heard them gnaw off one of my thick braids. Then I lost my spirit. My child and I together, all that of our feelings. What could we do but make? We began to move our hands. Why, I do not know. We began to braid. Why, it is a mystery, but we had to. Now I'm going to share some of the visuals. These are some braids that we began making. We made it from spools of fringe that are used traditionally on shawls. And we kept braiding. 215. Then the braids asked for a form to hold them. A few mornings, Auntie Tilda came over to help us 3 generations doing. Our words were unnecessary. It was more important to be together on the land in our. We trusted the process and metamorphosis of our little braids into do you see it? We trusted because we listened. Thank you. I hope that was okay.
It was so fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Layli. Thank you very, very much. Wow. Yes. Next up, we have Randall Horton. He is the recipient of the Gwendolyn Brooks Poetry Award, the Bear Gonzalez Poetry Award, the Great Lakes College Association New Writers Award for Creative Nonfiction, and the National Endowment of Arts Fellowship in Literature. He's a member of the experimental performance group Heroes Are Gang Leaders. Don't miss it if it comes around where you are, which recently received the 2018 American Book Award in Oral Literature, and the Barzakh Sessions was named Best Vocal Jazz Album by NPR in 2019. Rand's latest collection of poetry, number 289-128, is published by the University of Kentucky. His new memoir, Dead Weight, a memoir in essays, will be published by Northwestern in February 2022. Randall also recently served as poet in residence for the Civil Rights Corps in Washington, D.C., a nonprofit organization dedicated to challenging systemic injustice in the American legal system. He's a professor of English at the University of New Haven. Some years back, when as a new graduate student at the University of Albany, he walked into my office, I knew quickly that I could learn at least as much from him than he could from me. To close my little intro, here's a quote from the final poem in 289-128. Beauty after ruin lingers on the event horizon. Infinity plus one, a new morning echoing yesterday's cataclysm, a confluence of aestheticisms climaxing into a new way of looking in ruin does this and is ever more tied to the beautiful. Take it away, Randall.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you so much. It means, thank you for inviting me. Thank Brooklyn Rail. It means a lot to be reading with you, as you know. I'll save the rest for later, but I'm gonna start with a poem that actually began with those walking into your office, and that started me on this whole journey, man. And it took me a long time to get this poem right. It actually appeared in this book, and so we're gonna start there, and then we're gonna figure it out. All right. 289128, aesthetic beauty. I remember. I think. Was that you we saw in our tainted conscious, that peripheral place, a forgettable moniker at and beyond the edge, to say you were there, out of reach would well be a slippage. And even though it appears as if one aesthetic borderlines another, endangered of being boundary, you as in pristinely you were stowed away in that place that isn't, a place more than vision could see. To touch, to try, became taboo. Your category ungovernable and radical and illegal, like someone said, this mode of communication we string together, it doesn't equal us and you, oh so crazy, blinded by time, the same tawny fields, the flowing man-made streams. We bought into constricted ideals in that place whose name is merely a phantom of dead letters, the landmarks daily changing as if to get lost, to find our way back to nowhere and understand in 1,000 standing mirrors, a body memorializes and nothing can erase what we saw the real you in one fleeting moment. As the day before and almost the day after will never reconstruct itself again, this omen we had to keep asking ourselves over and over, the simplicity of an act, the casual step aside in the first minute of a new day. There you were, knowing all we had to do was leap. Yeah. All right. So something new, how about that? Preface to a traffic stop, sound. And in some way, both of these actually pay tribute to Baraka. That's why I kind of chose that one and this one together. Then I'm gonna read some from my book. So yeah, preface to a traffic stop, sound. I always thought sound was meant to indicate a kind of genuine, authentic, absolute individuation, which struck me as A, undesirable, and B, damn near impossible. Whereas sound was reality in the midst of this intense engagement with all the sound you ever heard. Sound shaped within the climate, inciting performances, black matter or antimatter, as in against. Sound, a central body of sonic, whereas you struggle to make a difference, so to speak, within that sound. And that difference isn't necessarily about you as an individual, but more simply trying to augment and differentiate the sound around you, getting closer and closer to a never ending, where you are the proletariat in somebody else's melodrama, as both spectacle and spectator, as the drama unfolds. Hold on. All right, let's see what we got. Here we go. 289128, imagination running wild. In the dream fabric of one cell, dangling from CT if not bodies, leaves fluttering against night's rustic sound, a chinook, a brittle swish, down by the riverbed, call it virginal, alongside open field day, and then that frame, a cold shivering human on the block, one-heeled gutter bound, secreted inside a storefront's cleft, a person drowned by gin's delirium, suspended inside a half-pint cop with loose change, say a self-less figure in a screen, another deferral, sleepwalking wide awake above daffodil heads painted alabaster. But what of the purple wisteria's blue, the mockingbird's obligato, altering time before a moment? If a raven is stuck in the obscure dark of night, here everything returns into another mute corridor. And Speaking of Fred Moulton, this one is sort of in conversation with him. 289128, Trouble the Water. Across the park marked street, through the breezeway, around the way of nowhere at all. The bridge, real and imagined, be troubled water over ground. Don't trouble the concept, but we did. On the one looking for the two, a 2 for 1 in certain geographical locations unerases the erased. We get back up, beat, do it again. Freedom ain't nothing, not even a word. So don't give me that regurgitated sound reprogram. An unconditional condition is what we ask for, someone yell. Our ass is what we follow. Then all light begins as dark matter. Bam. Forever is what you want it to be. Word up. And I'm gonna end as only a poet can do, with a little satire and swipe. And if you know, you know. If you don't, look at the book on page 70 and you might figure it out. 289128, Ars Poetica 3, Stay Woke. Faking the blues for a hand clap. Feel a good moment for the sake of self, glowing with laziness. Shortcut to the long game. A social media internet sensation, as in liking, not never wanting to be a color until award season rolled around. Contrived, unreal, and imaginary perpetual love for the Afro pick. Stealing away only to be co-opted as the long kid with all the toys nobody want to play with. A lie. Presented as truth, as American real, edited, monochromatic, a filtered, fashionable desire. Nurtured within the stomach of the beast's most fear. They, or specifically the associated, do walk among us, living an unstate by the state program as intelligentsia elite. Thank you.
I have to unmute myself. I think I did so. Thank you. Thank you, Randall. Now, Tracie Morris, MFA, PhD, a writer, editor of 10 books. Fellowships include University of Pennsylvania, CPCW fellowships, and Harvard University's WPR fellowship. Tracie is professor of poetry at the Iowa Writers Workshop and the 2021 Guggenheim Poetry Fellowship awardee. I see her books as what our friend Charles Bernstein has called a display of the possibilities for poetry. As Tracie writes in her Who Do With Words, essayistic writings taken off from the linguist J.L. Austin's ideas, human speech begins with the, I quote, the human need to embody, reflect the extraordinary, sacred, profound, scary, resistive, restive, through speech, song, poetry, articulation, expression, that is at the crux of the need to understand and be understood. These are fundamental tools we have always used to assert our particular ways of being and doing with words. If, as Christine Hume writes, her sound poems strip language down to its acoustical rhythmic potencies and potentialities to engage with the world while traveling in it corporeally, I would suggest that her page poems do this too, while adding polymorphic semantic gestalts that enchant this listener and reader. And here is Tracie Morris to do her voodoo with words.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction, and what an esteemed group to hang out with. Thank you so much, Pierre. Yeah, this is wonderful. I haven't and shout out to the Brooklyn Rail, BK all day, BK forever. And also, it's been a while. It's nice to read with the Brooklyn Rail. The last time I did something with you guys, I was telling Fong, was with Hurricane Sandy, and a sort of reading and acknowledgement of that phenomenon. We've had a lot of metaphorical and literal hurricanes since then, but it's nice to be with people in joyfulness as well as sorrow. I'm going to read a range of poems. I will not be reading any sound poems. Thank you so much for what you said about the page-based stuff. I just to say my sound poems, I feel like I'm making an aesthetic and political statement not to do sound poems on Zoom. I don't feel like I have to be with people in a room and not without mediation. And I feel like it's okay to not try to compensate for Zoom's strengths or failures, or limitations, I should say. Anyway, thanks for being here, everybody. The first poem I'm going to read was written through the pandemic, and it's part of a book that will be coming out next year. Acclimate. Windows solace the gray outside. Spring gray. I've been hearing songs of avians unfamiliar. It hasn't rained, tamping dust, so haze diffuses ivory brick home extensions. A panoramic view here of backs of things, homes, nests, geese veering. Inside here, white squares sharpen the bark my sealed African statues are made from. They look like me, my kind, my body. Some diademed, some nude. Some have the shape people pay lots for. My plants, to tell the truth, didn't all start out as seedlings. One came gorgeously bushy, crown of deep purpler, striped green leaves known for wandering. I confess I got it due to its looks. A chlorophymatic fro gives me pleasure. Through glass, a small family has made a yard out of their extended roof. A tot goes to play. Doggies bark in the late afternoon. The father goes out there by himself to clean the iota of poop using an eco-friendly disposable green bag over. He's always alone, picking up that detritus. Reverse Grim Reaper as he bends down, taking up what's used. I'm grateful to be separate from him, his choices and the smiles I see from here. The child embraces the bars along the parameters of the drop. This next poem is an excerpt from a long poem I did in response to Gertrude Stein's Tender Buttons. Her section is called Food. My section in response is called Consumption. And this is section 2 from Consumption. Starts with James Brown. Please, 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 please. Please, 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 please. Refrain. Please, oh, please. The other line. Mercy, mercy, pronoun. Every time I think I'm a outie, I'm a innie. I'm cordial, I'm slim, I'm a chickadee, seraph, Sarah. I'm girly, curly, I'm under the ground, I'm knotted. I've got a binding on me. I got a hidden agenda. I'm tied to a stick with a knot. I'm not saying, I'm just verb. Cloudiness at eye level is fog. Mist at knee level is mystery. Clouds at toe level is dewy, kinds of haze. The dewies are at all levels. Once gone, they don't come back. You just never know. Sooner or later, a schooner, a schlong, a jerk, a baller, a jag, a jackboot, jaded, a blue jay, a bracera, a banana, a bathtub, a boy, a beata. Sooner or later, that boy will become a man. He'll be taught to be a man. He'll be manageable, manhandled, a handler. He'll have greatness thrust sooner or later. He'll try it. He'll say what he is told. He'll do what he is told. He'll be told to. He'll get old being told what to do, how to do it. He'll be screwed. He'll do the screwing. He'll be a bulb, a round base, a skewer. He'll be a screwdriver. He'll be driven. He'll be a driver. He'll have privilege if he decides to do what he'd been told and retell it. Versacity. What's intended, rooted, meant. He'll do well if he recites it. If he's a certain kind of he, if he isn't a he like a he, a haw, guffaw, he'll have problems. He'll project them onto others. Other problems will be projected onto him. And then there's trouble. No matter what or where the matter is, it'll be about him. It'll shift. It'll be shitty if he doesn't retell that ditty. Go something like, yo, ho, ho. That's not begging. That's not saying please or mercy. That's a declarative for he. And that's how it went on, how it goes on. How do you say brecka dawn? That's how it said by some. And yes, by some is how it ends. It ended here with bison, with the end of them. That's where the Lordy gave some beef and took some away. Red took. Can't say too much, infinite bloodstream, still counting them. The coagulant is cold in red took. Black too. All the colors in the blood, in the deep meat, in gristle, cartilage, fat, black, red, taken, dislocated. At this joint, we're cooked. Where's all that coffin? Where's that coffin from? Third poem is this poem. I definitely wrote it with I definitely thought selected it with Pierre in mind. It's called Orwald the King. The last free white man lives with me. I'm nomading the earth's surface, never comfortable sediment, sand at the edge of the deep sea, its breach. Cuttercraft jumps from Jersey to Guernsey to White, prosaic, picking up a tote, too heavy a swivel case. I land following footsteps, a dark man, player king who'd shift mass and archipelagos, dying a foreigner ages before my birth. I find myself as he was, the sole Black person in this whole small plot. I find myself soon holding my chest, treading to this unbeknownst summon as ancient chorus. At the dock, the shadow of a tree is flat on a bleached building in aisle. The small trolley trundles to a tiny residential museum, someone's place, a legacy whom I didn't know. This little tract guides me to wander, custom out of place. Why does my clavicle heave now? Unusually heartsore by the small excavation, crypt diorama of the way back then. Grief for Orwald, one who, like mine own, recalls whom his ancestors adored. Combat cries curdle blood-sodden ground made hard mud. I tiptoe, tracing. Romans see over and over, come to lower him in penance. They bring salvation, kill power, he knew. Their sanguination pyre in white's new wounds. Orwald keeps supplicant and with the sword. King, I got close to sobs. Phantasm, your prowess still radiates this grave-sized haven. My self-center feels heaviness of your veins, these chambers, the room within rhizome of red corpuscle, the oxygenating breeze, this turf of echolocation and artery. Memory tends to reverb walls. Your unheard sounds shake my upper trunk. Now in my bit of house, in a burrow, jotting, my eyes fringe your resound piety, your uttering, my God more than my person. Your knowing cloaks thews as all the knives pierce you together. The last thing you see, as endemic protoplasm embeds stone, who's carrying off your sister? Her name unknown, she, Persephone of white, womb of their first dynasty. Yes, I shudder at this too, Orwald. Centuries of my myriad mothers know her wails. How am I at time? Am I okay for time?
You're great for time.
Okay. Oh no, Orwald always gets me, so I have to make sure I go off the deep end.
Don't worry, it got us too.
Oh, thank you. This is an excerpt from a response to film. I've been working with film for a few years, and it's called A History of American Violence, Black Cronenberg. This is an excerpt. This is a setup of safety, a gate. Similar people left to their own devices with no one outside to hate. A place of absence. I'm a by your door specter, Ellison invisible, and the only lead Black character, hello, guiding you into and out of and through the story. Searing sun heightens pallor and discomfort. This is a story about a world sans boogity boogity. Opening Samadhi's split level, maybe the resting place for a few, a dream of a sorting, a shift twixt siding and brick, earth, and firmament. Here's the crooked straight shot. Lewis and Clark step out, big belt, cigarette, not a Johnny Cash man, dark suited in this sun, some other soot, rapiers cross the younger's chest. The spotlight condemns one, what he's doing, done, the only time he blinks in this show. Eyes water once, no sunscreen or eye screen taken care of by the back of his hand. Sachet screens, streets, serpentine, where tired body and Clyde, joining others to the side. Where's the end of their ride? An older man with a younger one inside. Slick car radio waves, they've gone as far as they can glide. Business in the front, partying in the back, bulged by the waistline. Clark's dark slimming highlights the scythe. Lou doesn't know have to go far to get far, a stroll car, horsepower's trot. C throws matching black towel in the trash. Lewis swipes right, chariot hotspot, sidewinding, his sleeves rolling up, neat on the rocks. What do we need? Life's basics, no parching as we patch on back. His face a variation of, come on, Dad. Scythe slides aside, debates, 2, 4, 9, 8. We at a void, a gate, go team, shoulders roll, young Brando, sinew, a good sport, things kids do, checking for change, a pace, who gon' check me? A rundown, hollowed where they'd ask your narrator, me, for ID, twisting the landscape, Lou mildly engaged or splayed, oh bell, ding, waiting for that morning, fresh hell. A pop can cold clammy, moves the cart calmly, like his fridge, low level angle, sees a little story, slightly sweaty, a getting hotter morning, Pocahontas, assessing innocent glory, touching blonde Dolly. Lewis sees a little dark haired girl, doesn't feel a little bit sorry. So it's like the first 10 minutes responding to that film. Where of course he murders the child. Sorry if you haven't seen it, but you know, it's been like 15 years. And the last piece I'm gonna read, it's a harrowing film. And my motivation, just to mention behind it, is a film that describes American violence with no Black people in it, which is rare. The last piece I'm gonna read is called Tragedies in Acts, Avoiding Emmett Till at Furious Flowers Blacksonian Event. In Accra, Mom wanted to go north where the tallest Ghanaians abide, Othello-like. We'd sojourn, weirdly combine daughter crone, recall bleak magic, sail ships, docks. I instead advocate for tilapia so fresh, we remain lounging south by Tetakwashi roundabout. I lie then, not before this black tie thing, necktie thing. I stop by the bottom rim of DC's upside down triangles, quiver hitting home before prepping aesthetics to perform. African, American, Osiric land. I walk under earth, saw roots of that poetic day, taction, muffled breath, feet shuffles from one cased ampere to the next. Heavy aerating HVAC. I emerge earth level, furthest I could go. Time to gown for a ball, taffeta covers, a pregnant pause over pine, eternal hold, pleats, avert an aortic rupture source, promising to return to that thresh, that last square. He waits. Dakar dead due, crypt from Accra across Congo saying, come. There are things I can't. I celebrate being brave. I look askew at the cliff door, Sunu Gal from Seashore. I could have been Black Gertrude this day, reporting this innocent babe, puffed for, head garlanded by nettle. How our cracked crania could repeat inner swells, erupting cheeks. I fear upheaving grief. I bowed to Du Bois's tomb, other great warriors who've won. At the sparkling display, I cower above the frown of Mamie's murdered son.
Thank
so
you,
much,
Tracie. Thank you very much. We move right on to our last but not least poet, coming to us from way further east, i.e. from the westernmost part of Europe, that weird place, Alan Fisher. He's a poet, painter, and art historian. He performed with Fluxus in Britain in the 70s, studied physics and human physiology, then art, drawing, and color at Goldsmiths College, then art history at Essex. He left Brixton, London, and moved to Hereford in January '89 to teach and stayed there. Emeritus Professor of Poetry and Art at Manchester Metropolitan, head of art at Roehampton, head of contemporary arts at Manchester. He's done it all. A range of retrospective shows of his paintings have been in Hereford in 2013, London 2003, York 93. His next show will be with work by Penny Hallas and will open at the Tactile Bosch in Cardiff in September. He does work in public collections, including the Tate Gallery, the King's Archive, University of London, Hereford City Museum, Living Museum, Reykjavik, Iceland. He is also a poet, mainly, I think, of him, but it is impossible to kind of disentangle them. He's the editor of the journal Spanner and Spanner Editions and co-publisher of Allow's book, as well as New London Pride and Edible Magazine. And thank you, Alan. In 1972, when we met, you published my first books in Spanner Editions and in New London Pride. There are over 160 publications in Alan's name, recent ones including the artist book Black Pond, Imperfect Fit, Essays on Aesthetics, Facture and Perception, published here by the University of Alabama. His two long, great sequences, Place from 1971 to 1981 and Gravity as a Consequence of Shape, 83 to 2007, is now available in a complete edition from Reality Street in England. I proposed back in my essay, A Nomad Poetics, that, quote, we will take the whole of the new century to finally read Alan Fisher's vast investigation into all our knowledges, the great serial constructive dérive he calls Gravity as a Consequence of Shape. Did I exaggerate in terms of the time it would take to read his work? Do we actually have that much time left? I'm not sure on either count, so I know that the scintillating massiveness, the true to the world, I mean true to the cosmos complexity, the rich strangeness, call it Ostraneni of all the in-betweens, of the work in its imagistic and linguistic reaches, will ensure eye-widening pleasures and insights with discoveries galore for the long crossing. Today, Alan will read from his 1985 Brixton Fractals, which is part of the Gravity book, and from Black Pond 2020. Take it away, Alan.
Blimey, Pierre, thank you very, very much. It's really great. Thanks a lot, Brooklyn Rail. And thank you all for readings before me. Fantastic, thank you. Pierre's already told you what I'm going to read from. From Brixton Fractals, I'm going to read African Twist. I'm stopping myself after 6 minutes so I can get on with Black Pond, which will follow on from it. I was an innocent sort of child. A pluralistic perception of time marked by the experienced space just drives me wild. A small cornfield beyond the garden fence, low palm trees, a huge expanse of bush, here and there the shape of a baobab. 4 broken bricks staggered into 2 rows for a game. Turned to look at the sign over the door, simply to remember conversations with Gree, a background pulled over the plane of the foreground, reorganizing as other, here again. By the light of a petroleum lantern, wondering if the crop will be any good. What's wrong with our life? We go fishing into our garden, Agents retire to consulting firms to specialize in political risk. Fast forward on pink noise. Events require you, results inform you, spatial lies interpolate frisket. The sign over the gate, do what you want. The desire to organize one's hatred with the greatest possible tactical intelligence. Gibbon's carving of Eden under Blake's font. Here and there, the tall shape, a huge expanse beyond the garden, a steel tubular frame flat about a tree. It must have been thrown right over the top. A radical lack of value, a deliberate push and pull, as if free, asked as if there was a calendar, shrugged, we have a fete whenever we feel good. We get food and cook it. You need money, you take vegetables to market. Our design meets the challenge of political violence and investment uncertainties. Color ripe contact pierces snow. Power sign competes the phallism of political polite violation in test-meant circularities. But innocence is hard to beat. A new kind of sort of kindness, a local recorded by movements of the feet. A dozen low palm trees here and there, the tall baobab, the special spectacle repeats in 4 directions, 4 broken bricks in a straight line across the walkway. Avoid subjugation of feelings into marketed desire. It must have been bebop, it must have seen rebop, de-dop, de-bop. In the foreground, watched a woman trance dance to drums. We can't use nuclear equipment. What's wrong, please? When we ring the bell for help, we get these people are not readily visible to the outside. Light carried fit torch in apple. Every time the hellebore smelt, we get it breezed to reek. Buttercup red lily, rhizome toke or size. Walk towards the exit in cold rain through mud, pounds drama of loneliness, replaced by exuberance alone. Feeling your head thud the shelf, Blake sat on Kennington Common beneath poplars over Ephra Washway. Cornfield beyond the garden fence repeats on 4 sides, except for a dirt road to the hospital and village. A 12-inch square frame from a drain left in the empty space, a history of tenderness, an altered pace, going back for a tam-tam fiesta, for curing a madman neighbor. What's wrong with our life today? We try to get seasoned, mature judgments. We pay well, we pay fast. That keeps them loyal and vigilant. By chance, effected line break, meeting pupil. You lie up, tie up to reason, procure fudge. May say we stay fast skeepskates, boil and regate. Saw the frame of a bicycle with wheels lacking tires on a nail beside it. Beyond parody of the self, a restored strength. The whole body reels, then retires and rests until fit. Smelling bananas, once a store in Brixton Station, or from aroma, knowing that the twigs on sale could be toked, a huge expanse here and there, a baobab from the northeast corner, a dirt road. Instead of the frame, a cube 4 feet across, made from bricks in the play area. Anticipation of loneliness avoided in production, without domination, a deliberate avoidance of nation in an address. Shat under a poplar tree, watch the moon turn red. The weaker left to starve. To go to our garden and get food, we just recommend good old American ingenuity. Crawl on your belly. Past stinking weeds across the bananas saying, they make me itch. The unexpected resulted as inside rest introduced through the eye. Full health, small percentage straight away, improvements, turning point, permanent in London. A just reckoned, send wooden merry-go, engine for you to install on your telly. Gone cold as I enter the narrow door, which leads up by a winding stairway. Mao said, relinquish space to gain multiplicity of time. Yet get old, learn there is more without need to project into the airway. A small cornfield, huge expanse, a baobab, a road, a clear walkway, a pair of boots that don't match. Over the top, a destructuration ruled by the alienate. Every so often you make a catch, a bottle of gin down the practitioner's gullet. weighed by materials. I feel inner emptiness, insecure from learning. He turns to proportions. She releases the shutter against Schiff's illusion, the legislature's nullification of the people's referendum. Went to market specifically, buy twigs for sale to mix with chalk carried from Togo. Brixton store girl, go, say, don't forget to root it and get it good and sticky before you put your white stuff in. I have a pretty high visibility, so I don't travel. Helping friends is not immoral. Moved once, someone on the box acting unselfishly through television snow. Unawaited issue, proportional space reposed, made known as the consequence of suffusion. Imagine a witty wry viscosity sold to unravel, sticking commends this time quarrel. Read Klopstock, wrote and counted until Lambeth turned from the stars, wiping arse on the sun. And what I'm going to do is read from Black Ponds. I'm going to read just 4 stanzas. They have numbers, so you'll know that I'm progressing towards 6. One, what in me dark alone in the bog sinking, and a hole in the window shut of the dismal situation, waste and wild from a dark chamber, placed into invisible darkness, doleful shades, where peace and rest can never dwell, sulphur unconsumed in utter darkness, at large to his own dark designs, his eye surveyed the dark idolatries, the power nexus of worker and minerals. 2 eyes are starkly bright as love, alienated on a groundsel edge, when night darkens the streets, then wander flown from insolence with wine. 2. Darkened so, yet shone his face, deep scars of thunder had entrenched, long under darkness cover, this dark opprobrious prison, this darkness light, the never-ending flight. What chance, what change, worth waiting, this deep world of darkness do we dread? How oft amidst cataclysmic annihilation, the planet on a collision course with a dark sun, thick clouds, dark to reside. 3. Our darkness, seen as in a glass, passed over possibilities of atomic development in search of this new world, with wander feet, frontotemporal dementia, the dark unbuttoned infinite through the palpable obscure, abroad through all the coasts of dark destruction, the doubtful consultations dark rejoice, the darkened landscape beyond this flood of tau isoforms, multiple molecular confirmers, dark and wild perpetual storms, on firm land gathers heap and ruin abundant. Neurofibrillary tangles and plaques of cerebral cortex, straight filaments. Lastly, 6. Neuritic plaques in the cerebral cortex present plans for sealing and mark site with a beam, with a berm, a core of salt, above ground footprint of the repository, buried radar reflectors, magnets, a storeroom, slab too big to be removed from the darkened chamber, carved with signs of desire and dereliction, crouched on casts of pulsing entombed molecules, presence of abundant neurofibrillary lesions, connective memories deep in the Permian strata, paired helical and straight tau filaments, the dark descent then feed on thoughts that voluntarily move harmonious numbers as the wakeful bird sings darkling and in shadest covert, hid tunes her nocturnal note. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much. So I think we will have a few minutes to talk. I haven't seen any questions, but Malvika will come in and have some. So first, I want to thank you guys to be you 4. It was a really absolute treat to have you read here, to listen to you. By the way, I was unable and didn't want to put anything in the chat line because I was listening to you and I didn't want to distract myself from the listening. So I see that there's a lot of chat going on, but I can't do it. So something I wanted to bring up there was that question that I broached in the little intro that had to do with the local versus the global. And what is your take on that? Am I off when I'm saying the local has become the global and the global is the local? I mean, obviously there are very local things that happen. We can see it in the poems. Look at Layli's opening work, you know, the local is always there. But at the same time, it seems to me that we have to deal with the global through the local and with the local through the global. Do you have any please tell me I'm wrong.
I would. No, I would say that you're not wrong. I would say that you're absolutely right. If you think about, you know, the way that we sort of able to get information, you know, it's become more of a, you know, a thing where everybody can sort of like educate themselves a little bit about what's going on in the world. Versus probably when I was coming up, I'm not going to date myself and others, but I'm just saying, I think, you know, when I was coming up in a certain particular time in history, that wasn't possible. I was landlocked in Birmingham, Alabama. I didn't know anything past that, except for what I saw on TV every now and then. And I think that has sort of changed, you know, when people can sort of see the world outside, you know, even if they don't know their world, they can sort of understand what's going on more globally now. And I think that information has, you know, sort of caused this sort of a awakeness or awareness, if you want to call it, within local communities, even more so than understanding that they're oppressed and whatever you want to call it. So,
of course, you can also claim that the media will use the global to obfuscate the local, you know, using, you know, a big storm in wherever to, you know, minimize the horrors going on right at home, right? So
it's a line right there. It totally is, trust me. Yeah, so that's interesting. But
yeah, I was just gonna say, there's all, you know, just to bring in a pop culture reference, old cult classic, Buckaroo Banzai in the Fifth Dimension. He says, oh, he has a line, no matter where you go, there you are. And so one of the things I find, because I've traveled a lot outside the United States, is that I carry my heart with me, which is often a Black heart. But you know, my sensibilities and all of that are reframed, but not necessarily erased going other places, and sometimes imposed upon my person with certain assumptions based on my person. So it's, in addition to being local and global, there's also the limitations of the idea of global citizenry, as well as its expansiveness, which is why I wanted to write about King Arwald. It's like, nobody expects, why would you care about a pagan king of the Isle of Wight? Because I felt it in my heart, somebody being killed for their beliefs, you know.
interesting.
Anybody else there from us, Layli? Layli had some trouble, I think, with the, there's a question for Layli that came up, but I know. I just was amazed, if I'm thinking it from Layli's new poem, you know, of that ethnocide discovered now, you know, which is local and at the same time global, because that ethnocide has been imported, you know, by people from where Ellen and I come from, you know, that part of the world. Back to Ellen's, at the end, Ellen's 1970s poem, very local in Brixton, in London, Brixton, and you know, that was located at a very strong political moment in Brixton too. So somewhere we always come out of the local, but that local obviously opens up and opens out. Let's see.
I think along those lines, I know we have just a few moments left. And thank you all so much for everything that you have shared. There is really a cultural generosity that we've experienced here. I do want to bring up one question that's come in from Igor from the chat. And Igor, I hope it's all right. I'll just summarize your question here really briefly. But Igor asks, why isn't there solidarity amongst poets and amongst the young as it used to be in the 70s? And maybe we can extrapolate to other historical periods. And I guess my question here is also maybe to close this out, what do you feel are the steps for solidarity among cultural workers, writers, artists, poets right now? Do you feel like this is the case? And, you know, I know some among us in the reading today, you know, have worked in activism, have worked a little bit in organizing. And so I'm wondering, like, do we have, to close us out, suggestions for coalition building across the arts?
Ellen, do you want to take that?
No, I don't. I couldn't. I don't think I can manage that.
Yeah.
I would argue that, hold on, let me see. I would make sure I'm on. I would argue that there is some solidarity between young writers. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I'm in that tweener, but I'm getting old quick. But whatever. But I would argue that there is some, so it's a different set of, you know, I guess, things, for lack of a better word, circumstances, issues that they're sort of grappling with. Things changed. I looked up one day and I think the world was changing. I literally right before my eyes about a lot of things. So that though these shifts happen, and I think I would argue that the younger poets are in our sort of, I would say, you know, like organized in sort of this very cohesive way. But I think there is this sort of thing about being aware of, like, you know, what you're doing socially, where you are, what you're trying, you know, and sort of like, and so I think they get into the, you know, whatever they're interested in. There are a lot of things that I see now, and I came into this thing sort of late, you know, when it's no, you know, definitely I'm almost 40 years old. And in the time that I've been around, I think I've seen a lot of things that sort of progress in very different ways for the better. So it could always be better though. And it could always, and I think we're always questioning, because I live on that preface of like looking at what some young poets are doing, but I got to realize that they're doing their thing. They can't do my thing. And that's the thing, like, you got to do your thing. You can't do my thing, right? And even if our things overlap in some kind of way, you know, I think you have to find your own way. And that's the beauty of like living this sort of poetic life, is that you get to find that. You can't insert that. It's not an injection where you can put it into a generation like, oh yeah, you go forth and now you're like this. I think it's going to happen like that either. So,
well, there are certain things that happened, and I mean, if I can sum that up to in some way, or a feeling that I have, is that once the university creative writing program became a mass giant takeover, what I experienced at 18 and 20 as young poets, outside of all that, you banded together because nearly for survival and finding community ways of surviving. And what I saw when I was teaching to some extent, and I tried to not teach creative writing because of that, was a kind that there were more a class formation really of people who wanted to get that job and get
right.
You know, and so a certain type of poetry community became rarer. I mean, that kind of the big city community that Ellen and I knew in South London, I knew in New York in the late 60s, very early 70s, during the 70s in South London and back again. But, you know, as you say, Randall, there will always be poets getting together, creating communities and moving themselves on. Yeah. So I may just be talking old fuddy-duddy stuff.
I just, can I also just say that Layli's, I think Layli set the tone. It's like saying what needs to be said. That's the foundation of being a poet, and also community, right? Communing, including the things that can't even be uttered. You know, it's like, how does one formulate what can't be said? So I thought about, not to speak for you, Layli, but the blank spaces, what wasn't said, the space that you left for us to absorb those things. You know, community is sitting in that space, in that understanding a little bit of that painfulness. A mother looking at her child at the moment that you get that kind of genocidal news. And that's global also, you know, that's a global genocide of this hemisphere. And I'm just grateful to get that kind of deeper understanding because of her work, and of course the wonderful work of everybody that I've heard today.
Thank you, everybody. I'm so happy we could do this. I think Malvika wants us to come to a close. Would you say
We
so?
certainly can. If anyone has anything else, you know, little they'd like to share, please feel free to jump in. But thank you all so much, Layli, Randall, Tracie, Alan, and of course Pierre, for bringing us all together and opening up this beautiful space. I wish we'd gotten to speak a little bit more about the Fred Moten tone throughout the reading consistently. There's been so many gems. As always, we'll share the recording of today's reading on our archives online as well as on YouTube. And please join us again tomorrow for, very relevant to your point, Pierre, a tribute to SVA's art writing MFA, when Rail managing editor Charles Schultz and contributing writer Anne C. Collins joins writer, critic, and former chair of the MFA program in art writing at the School of Visual Arts, which unfortunately came to a close earlier this year. They'll be joined by a fantastic panel of writers, scholars, and former faculty in celebration of the community and sort of social space built there. And that will be, as always, at 1 p.m. right here in the Zoom. Other than that, thank you all so much. And I'll invite you to turn on your microphones if you'd like to say goodbye on your way out, hello to one another, or anything else that comes to mind. But this has been really special. Thank you so much. And timely, look at us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all, and thank you, Pierre.
Thank you all.
Nice. Enjoyed it.
On a personal note, for this season of the Rail, this has been really fantastic.
Really well done.
Great.
Good to read with you, Tracie. Alan, I saw you when I was in my PhD program. You might not even remember that, but it's definitely great to read with you today. So I consider it. You don't remember that, do you? He brought it in, man. Yeah. So everything comes full circle.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I'm gone.
Bye.
Circle.
I am.